I'm Kerry from Living in Loveliness, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you to my YouTube channel. During our session today, I'm going to show you a super easy project to use up some of your favourite Christmas scraps. So let's head over and have a look at what we're going to make. This part is probably my favourite part. It's also the part where I find myself getting really distracted, having a rummage through, looking at the fabrics that I've got in my stash and choosing out my favourite ones for the project. So let's go ahead and do that. So as you can see, I've got the interior part of the Bowl Cosy with the wrong side of the fabric facing up towards me. I've then got a square of wadding. Now I'm using an 80-20 wadding, and this is ½ an inch smaller than the square. So here we have an 11-inch square and the wadding is a 10-inch square. I'm then going to take the basting spray and just apply a little bit. This will just secure this into place to make this easier when we come to sew this. And what we're going to do is to just centre this onto the fabric, run our hands over and just ensure that this is secured into place. The next thing that we're going to do is to take a ruler and place it onto the fabric and draw a line, a diagonal line across that square. So I'm just going to use a here. You could use a fabric pen if you wanted to, or you could even go ahead and you could just fold this or even use a clover tool to make an indentation. Either way, we just want to be able to see that cross in the centre. I'll do this nice and bold so it's easy for you to see there on the camera, but you don't have to do yours as bold as mine. The next thing that we're going to do, we'll pop this to one side for now. We're going to take the exterior piece of fabric. This time we want this facing up towards us and we're not attaching anything to the back. What we're going to do is exactly the same. Take that ruler, place it on a diagonal and just mark this up. So we've got a cross giving us our guidelines of where we're sewing. So I'll do that one more time. And now we're ready to head over to the sewing machine. So when I take this to the sewing machine, I'm simply going to sew across these two crosses here. Now you can absolutely use a straight stitch here, and if you do choose to use a straight stitch, I would encourage you to increase that to your longest stitch. Or you can use a zigzag stitch, which is what I'm going to use, or this is a wonderful opportunity to use those fabulous stitches on your sewing machine. So maybe you have some little trees on there. Maybe you're not making this in Christmas fabrics. Maybe you're making these to set your Valentine's table. I know my machine has some hearts on there, but this is a wonderful opportunity to slow down and to sew across there and showcase those lovely stitches. So let's go ahead and do that. So as you can see, I've set the machine up so the centre of the machine foot is on the line that I've already drawn ahead. I've selected the zigzag stitch, and I'm simply going to sew across all of those lines that I've drawn on for both pieces. The interior with a wadding and the exterior without the wadding. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The next thing we're going to do is to create the darts on each side of both the exterior and the interior to give that lovely Bowl Cosy finish. So what we'll do is, first of all, if we start with the interior, we're going to fold this in half and we're creating the dart here on the fold. So I'm also going to use a couple of clips at this point as well to secure those in place. Now you're going to take a ruler, line this up, so the raw edge you're placing the 2-inch line and you're going in 1 inch. So I've got the raw edge on 2 inches and from the fold I've got 1 inch in. What I'm going to do next is to just mark this up. So just a tiny little mark here. We're then going to take that ruler and join those two dots. So placing that ruler back on, and I'll mark this nice and bold so you can see that there. So this will create the dart. So if I just pop a clip into place for now, and this will secure this for when I come to sew it in a minute. So what we're going to do is flip this over to make it nice and easy, and we'll mark up. So 1 inch is in from the fold, 2 inches from the raw edge. So just make a small mark. Take your ruler and marry up those dots. So we'll pop another clip to secure this into place. So it's just a bit easier to do it as we follow it with a ruler. But you might want to do it on all sides. We're then going to fold this in half again. So what you'll notice now is this is sort of folding away from you, but that's absolutely fine. I'm taking the ruler again, place the ruler on, 1 inch from the fold, 2 inch from the raw edge, and then marking up. Take that clip, flip this over, and mark up that final side. So 1 inch is in, make a mark, 2 inches from the raw edge, and marry this up. So what we'll do now is take this back to the sewing machine and sew along each of those lines, making sure these are folded over in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark up the interior as well. So following that same technique, ruler on top, 1 inch is in from the fold, 2 from the raw edges, and marking this up, marrying up those dots. You can use a pin or a clip, whichever you prefer. Flip this over and follow that process. So I'll do those last 3 sides now. So let's go ahead and sew along each of those lines. What you'll notice is I've rested this beneath the sewing machine foot, and I'm lining up that dart line underneath in line with the centre of the machine foot. I can now remove that clip so it's out of the way. I'm going to start with a reverse stitch and sew all the way along to the end here on that raw edge, and just finish with a reverse stitch as well, just to make sure that none of those seams are coming out as I sew across those. So I'll take this off the sewing machine, and I'm going to go ahead and do that for all sides of the interior and the exterior. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now you've sewn your darts in, what we're going to do is to just trim away 1/4 of an inch towards the folded edge, making sure that we're not cutting through that dart. So the easiest way to do this is to take a ruler, pop your 1/4 inch line on top of that pen mark and trim that away. Of course, you can absolutely do this with a pair of scissors if you prefer, but I prefer to use a rotary cutter. You'll also need to trim away these excess threads as well. So I'll go ahead and do that for both the interior and the exterior as well. Now we've trimmed away all of those corners, what we're going to do, it's easier if you take the Bowl Cosy interior because you've got that wad in there giving you that additional strength. And if you place this exterior on top, aligning all of those raw edges, you can see that naturally sits nice and snug in place. Now the first thing to do is to mark up 2 inches here. So mark up a 2 inch turning gap. You want to avoid the middle seam and also the corner. We're then going to work in the centre here where those darts are. Press one seam left, one to the right, and pop a clip on. Or pin, whichever you prefer. And we'll do that on all darts to get started. So once this is clipped into place, you're going to sew around all of those raw edges, starting and finishing with a reverse stitch and excluding that turning gap. So let's go ahead and do that. this next session, you're simply going to need a small pair of scissors and some sort of pokey tool. You can absolutely use the edge of your scissors, but a little tool with an end where it's not going to poke through the corner is much better. So what we're going to do is to just cut away that excess fabric on the corner of your Bowl Cosy. And we'll repeat that on all 4 sides. We'll then use that turning gap and turn this the right way out. So let's find that little gap that we left. Now, because this is quite a decent size, we're going to slide our 2 fingers into the furthest point and just tease that through the gap. Now that's plenty big enough, but do take your time, especially if you're making the smaller Bowl Cosy. And as you push into each corner, you can just take your little tool and just slide that into the corner so you're getting the best finish on each of those corners there. So I'll go ahead and do that on all 4 corners. So at this stage, we're simply just going to give this a little press. And we can press here onto the corner, take a moment to trim away all those excess threads. And in particular, we want to look at the side where we've got that turning gap. So here's your turning gap. As we take this, we're going to press this flat. You can naturally see it already does that. It was quite difficult for me to find that. And I'm just going to give that a press. So as I press into all 4 corners, we're then going to take a needle and thread and sew that turning gap. So what I've got here is a needle with a double thread, and I've just knotted that on the corner. And I'm simply going to do a little ladder stitch there just to get a nice finish and tuck that thread inside before we go ahead and top stitch. Now when we come to top stitch, all I'm going to do is place this onto the sewing machine, and this time sew around all of the edges, again using that same decorative stitch. So again, mine was a zigzag stitch. You may have used a straight stitch or even one of those lovely decorative stitches. Now when you come to knot this off, we've got a little loop. Slide your needle through, pull this tight, and we'll do that for a second time. Now before we head over to the sewing machine, I'm going to give this a final press. So anything that's not completely flat, we can get nice and flat here. So let's head over to the sewing machine. So I'm placing this onto the sewing machine now. I've selected that zigzag stitch. I'm simply lining the edge of my sewing machine foot up with the side of the Bowl Cosy. I'm going to keep this nice and flat, so it's almost as if I'm sewing a continuous line, and I'm going to sew around all of those edges. Now I never start on the corner or at the dart. You can start anywhere else. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Well done. Now I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what fabrics you used. I would love to see those on social media. Don't forget to hashtag Living in Loveliness, and of course the project that we've made today. And I look forward to having a nosy and supporting you on socials with that beautiful scrap friendly project. I'll see you very soon for another sewing session. Bye for now.